And welcome back to another edition of the Matt Stats Show, along with Kevin Hazard and Glenn Gormley. I'm Jason Bryant. Again, we are welcomed by the presence of one Deputy Director of the National Wrestling Coaches Association, Dr. Jackie Paquette. A little bit hoarse from the past weekend's festivities at Indianapolis, at the University of Indianapolis, UIndy, for what has become, well, it's been this way for a long time, the mecca of Division II in-season wrestling, the Midwest Classic, the 44th edition. And by the way, your voice is kind of scratchy here as we record on Monday. Must have been a pretty good weekend. Must have been pretty exciting.
It was pretty fun. Definitely fun. We had the largest field we've ever had at the Midwest Classic. 21 of the top 25 ranked teams in NCAA Division II men's wrestling. And they put on a show. They put on an absolute show. Our OW, Gabe Hickson-Bob Montevallo, he comes from a first-year program, took out the number 1, the number 5, and maybe the number 8, 7 wrestler along the way to go through the tournament. I mean, Lander comes away with the title, sort of went out there with something to prove, and they proved it. Just a great event of Division II wrestling, and really a lot of fun, almost 1,000 matches over 2 days in Indianapolis here.
Yeah, it's just been a cavalcade. The monster tournaments are not just regarded for the Iron Man, the Beast, and Reno. Now, college had some big ones, of course. Keep an eye on that. And the Lander thing is one of those things where, they kind of rose quickly to national prominence, picking up a trophy last year. And then that number 1 ranking, people look at it and be like, is that really it? And they backed it up this weekend. They've got a lot of tournament points. RC's done a good job down there at basically creating a wrestling culture. And I think most wrestling fans, if you didn't know where it was, would have a hard time knowing that Lander is in South Carolina. So a place where we used to not have a whole lot of wrestling at all, and now there's some. We had Newberry rise and be prominent when they were a relatively new program. Lander carrying the torch down there as well right now, currently. And, Montevallo down there in Alabama, the only scholarship wrestling program there. There's a Division III school there. Of course, we know D3 doesn't offer athletic scholarships. But, yeah, really cool storylines coming out of the Midwest Classic.
Yeah, and, in addition, in talking about new programs, you also have Grand Valley State came out and had 3 placers this weekend, too. Including all 3 in the semifinals. 1 finalist. So doing a lot of cool things. New programs coming out strong in D2.
Yeah, it also shows it doesn't take very long in Division II to become nationally competitive. We've seen it at the NAI in Division III levels. Then again, a lot of movement at the top within Division II. Teams fighting each year in and year out. One of the most competitive tournaments. But today we get back to talking about the high school side and participation. Glenn, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you drive the keys to part 2 again. I'm going to go off screen here just a little bit, but before I do that, I'm going to make sure you've got the Ramones still up here again. For those of us,
yes, we do.
Agically challenged. I don't think that's a word, but the Ramones were if not the greatest 3-chord punk band of all time, with most of their songs coming in under 2 minutes, but hopefully we can keep this show under, well, we're not going to keep the show under 2 minutes, but Rock and Roll Radio was one of their hits. A couple things that don't really play now with the political correctness side of the world, but we're just, the song titles were fun. They were a fun band, and I still regularly have them in my rotation. But Glenn, Rock and Roll Radio, Rock and Roll High School, take away part 2.
Okay, guys. Thanks for everything. I just want to start out on behalf of Matt Stats and the NWCA to say Merry Christmas, season greetings, Happy New Year's to everybody. We're very lucky to have Dr. J. Paquette on the show again today. This is a continuation of the episode we did in November. Okay. Dr. Paquette, her interns and her staff sent out a survey to many of the states. We got responses from 39 states, and this is going to analyze what they do so we can give recommendations on what might be helpful to grow our sport. Okay. Just like we always do, slide 2 says, I feel like a number because it is a stats show. Then, of course, slide 3, we added Jenny, back from me and Hazard's Day. Too old for you and for Dr. Paquette and Jason Bryant to understand it, to remember.
Oh, no, we get it.
But now,
we get it.
We get it. It's an iconic song. It's an iconic song. Doesn't have anything to do with age.
Oh, yeah, it's very iconic, yeah. I was just more or less teasing me and Hazard for being old and being jealous that you guys are so young. Um, okay, the opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect any policies or opinions of the NWCA. And once again, Gormley does a lot of uh, the slideshows on this, so sometimes he says match stats opinions, and Hazard and Jason might not agree with Gormley. So just so you know, with all that show. Now, one of the things I've realized, as you can see here on slide 5, match stats is based on numbers, stats, and that stuff, and then it can lead to opinion. Okay, I got a great text from Dr. Bobby Powell, orthopedic surgeon from William and Mary, back when we had a team, and it became apparent to me that I didn't explain this well enough to people. Okay, this is a numbers show. Okay, and then we can, like for example, on this show, then I can recommend to Dr. Paquette and Mike Moyer on what maybe they should pursue to help grow the sport. Okay, so it's based on numbers. Now, with that being said, there's a reason that there's not just Gormley on this show. There's a reason we have Jason and Kevin, because they know a hell of a lot more about the sport than I do, so they can give their opinion. And then at times we have guests on the show, and this month and last month, of course, are Dr. Paquette. I wish the whole world was about numbers, but it's not. Okay. Now, let's then start with this thing as we do every week. We put on how many college teams there are, because the one thing I get asked more than anything else is how many college teams are there? And of course, some specifics like, does this school have a team? Does that school have a team? Well, now there's 501 men and women's NAIA, NCAA teams. That is just great news, guys. That is the most ever. So we're very happy about that. Okay, now let's start going into what this show's all about now. We learned on episode 26, which was part 1, that the biggest correlation state by state in high school was the population of that state. Okay, there's nothing we can do here or the NWCA can do to change population, right? People move where they move. Moyer does a lot of good things, but he can't really influence population all over the country. Okay.
He'd certainly give it a try.
Oh yeah, he would give it a try. Yeah.
I was thinking exactly the
same
thing.
Why. yeah. He'd call all of us up and wonder why we haven't changed it. Okay. So once again,
he did
Dr.
convince me to move to
said,
Lancaster, Pennsylvania once upon a time. So he does have the ability to get people to move.
Oh, yes. And I moved up to E-Town too for a while, so I agree. Okay. Now, just like international wrestling, we have 2 periods on this. First period happens to be girls. Second period happens to be boys. Okay, now, one of the most famous and probably the most watched movie of all time in American history is The Wizard of Oz. And there's a famous scene in there when the Good Witch of the North Glinda tells Dorothy it's always best to start at the beginning. In other words, where the yellow brick road starts. So where does Gormley think it's best to start at this? Okay, is what state sanctioned and when? Okay, for women's high school wrestling. Okay, now one of the things about this, to use an old accounting term, you only get one bite of this apple. In other words, you can only sanction for the first time one time, right? Once you've done that, you can't keep resanctioning. Now, slide 12, we have a list because people have asked me this, and I wanted to thank Sally and her crew at Wrestle Like a Girl. I went onto their website and got this information. It shows you when each state was sanctioned, what year, and you can see, guys, it's a recent phenomenon. It's really just been going on since 2018, and it's great for the sport. Like when I was living right near Moyer in Lancaster County, there was only 5 or 6. Now we have, 45 if you count emerging sports status in a few states. Okay. Slide 13. State sanctioning just means more. Okay. What this slide shows you, highlighted in red, is the number of states that were sanctioned and their multiplier compared to all states. And I do it 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. Obviously, the states that sanctioned in 23, I can only do 1 year because it's not 24 yet. Okay.
Mhm.
So what we've learned here, okay, is that I'm not going to read you all these numbers. I'll just give you the total summation of this. There's a stats term called stochastic dominance. Okay. And when I first said this to Kevin, he thought I was saying scholastic dominance, meaning
I thought
like,
you were spelling it wrong.
yeah, he thought I was spelling it wrong, meaning like Blair's really good scholastically. That's not what I meant at all. It's a statistical term. Okay. And basically, what we're seeing here is the state sanctioning has a stochastic dominance over the states that are just all states. So there is some there where sanctioning that sport has really helped each of these states. Okay. Now, I think it's great for all the people in all the states that got this done. I don't want to list anybody because I might leave somebody out. So I'm just giving a hats off to everybody that was involved in that and the importance of it. Okay. Now, based on the survey that Jackie sent out, and Jackie and Kevin, if you have anything while I'm talking and want to slow me down, pipe in, because of course Jackie knows much more about this than I do. And because of her voice, I might just have to keep on talking. Okay. Is there a higher growth rate in states that have dual meet girls state titles versus one that don't? Okay. Yes, there is. Okay. There's a much higher multiplier. It's 4.3 versus 2.54 if there's no dual meet tournament. Okay. Now, we did learn now this is from the 39 states that have the survey filled out. Not all 50 states and 51 if you count DC. Now, we learned on episode 26 where we had to control for a few things based on population. So, what we did on this, there's three possibilities. Now we're talking about states, excuse me. If a girl can wrestle in a boys' division, okay, there's three possible answers. Yes, if there's no girls' team. Yes, even if they have a girls' team. And no, if there's a girls' team. Okay, the highest growth rate is yes, if there's no girls' team, they can wrestle in the boys. Then no, if there's a girls' team. And the lowest one is if you can wrestle there, even if there's a girls' team. So what we did for category 2, we controlled for California and Washington because they are in the mature line of this, even that it's recent in relative terms, right? So even when you control for that, okay, it's still best to let girls wrestle girls. Okay. Now, if there is no girls team, sure, let them wrestle boys teams. But if you want to know what we found statistically, girls wrestling girls help grow the sport. Okay. That's as bluntly as I can put it. Okay.
Can I say something there, Gorms?
Sure, Kevin.
My son's a coach, and he's had girls on his team for the past 10, 15 years, but one or two at a time. And 2 years ago, he had 5 girls on the team. They had their first state championship last year. They got emerging growth status. This year, he had 16 girls come out, and he's had 5 more since then. He's lost a couple. He loses. Kids come out every year, and he loses a certain percentage. Basically the same percentage of girls stopped wrestling, but just triple the growth, just because they knew there was a place to go for girls.
Well, that's Kevin. That's a great explanation. That is what we're finding is that if girls know they can have other girls to wrestle with in the room, it's making them more comfortable. Obviously, representation matters in a lot of ways. If you see other girls doing what you want to do, it's going to make you more comfortable, and it's going to make those girls that maybe not even considered wrestling in the past think, oh, maybe I can wrestle too. That representation never used to be there. And so, Kevin, I think what you explained with your son's team is the perfect example of that.
Thank you, Kevin. It is one of these things that it could be on a school by school basis when you switch to girls just wrestling girls. And I don't have an answer for that, but I obviously know Kevin's son very well, and he's one of the premier coaches in the country. I mean, so it's just something that I think shows like this can help out and say it is best if girls wrestle girls, but sometimes there's not enough girls in the room, right? So what you guys were saying. So let's move on now. You guys just discussed what I said on the slides up to number 20 there. You guys discussed them well. So let's skip to 20, where does the number of divisions a state have affect the growth rate across the state? Okay. The answer to that is no. Okay. As you see there's 27 states with just one division. We're talking girls, and then 12 states with one or more. Okay. And it doesn't really affect a multiplier of the growth at all in that. So that's just something that should be left up to the state and go from there. Okay. Another thing I noticed in the survey that Dr. Paquette and the NWCA sent me, some states allow more than one female wrestler from a school in the same weight class. Okay. Does this affect the growth? No, it doesn't. Okay. However, I think it's great to have more people with a chance to do it. Just as a fan, I would love to see it, but it's not something that we can say affects the growth of the sport.
So
Okay.
I think that, Gorms, I think that the thing there is that also is mirrored in the college space as well right now for the growth of the
Correct.
sport. In the college
Yeah.
space, in the NCAA and the NAIA, you can enter more than one at a weight class, heading into the regional or the conference tournaments for NAIA and then the national tournament. And again, people may question why that is, especially because they're so used to the men's side, right, where you have a wrestler for the spot. But again, it's about growing the sport. Let's give more opportunities so that we can get more people, more women especially. We can get more women wrestling.
I'm all for it, Dr. Paquette. I agree totally with you. You said that much clearer than I did, even with no voice. Okay, so to sum it up, what we do in slide 22 is, what I'm saying here, and I've never been a fan of Big Brother, looking over anyone's shoulder. Let the states decide and the schools decide. States should make a decision based on their own stuff. James Madison wrote something about this when he wrote the Constitution. Now, the problem with James Madison is not the person, the school. They need two wrestling teams. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all for them starting those two. Okay. Now, next, does keeping a team score at the individual state tournament affect the growth of the sport compared to teams that don't? Okay. It really doesn't, although there's only 7 states that don't keep that. So once again, it's hard to draw a judgment on that. So I don't really think we could recommend to anybody keeping score because of this reason. I'm all for keeping score because somebody should win, right? And somebody should come in second, etc. Okay.
So I think that on this, Glenn, I think that it's interesting if you think about this in conjunction with what we looked at a little bit ago with if they're having a dual event. So it's interesting to see how the overall team component impacts, right?
Certainly.
We know, and I mean, you can think about that. I know you're a numbers guy, but we can think about that more from a psychological side of things sometimes too,
Sure.
in respect to being a part of something, supporting a team. Women sort of have a little bit more of that, right? They want to be a part of something and they want to, have that relationship with other people, very relationship based. Women are, and a team aspect provides that relationship based piece. So that's why I was not surprised to see the fact that having a dual championship is good, right? Because women want to have that aspect where they have the relationships, and being able to support a team versus just an individual gives that big piece of relationship building to me.
There
I
was something interesting that I saw a couple of weekends ago. track lost they lost everything for like an hour.
Yep.
And I was at a boys tournament, and it just basically came to a halt. And then there was a couple of like memes online or reels the next day at a couple girls tournaments. They turned it into an organized dance session, and it was only at the girls tournament that happened. But it's like you just said, they tend to have a more unified feeling about things. It was really great to watch.
Hmm.
That is great, guys. And, to sum it up, I'm all for keeping score, and there should be a winner. And of course, individual state tournaments, I mean, if we didn't keep score in 88 and 89, I couldn't rub it in Moyer's face every year that William Mary won the tournament. Anybody could have said who won it, but we kept score and we won. Okay. So, now we're skipping on to the second period, like they do in international wrestling. It's boys, okay, and the same thing that Dr. Paquette sent out surveys. On many other shows, we talk about how the inclusion of women and women's teams in colleges have, in my mind, saved men's wrestling. Okay, so one of the things I did then here is did the sanctioning revolution in girls spill over to the boys? Okay, so we have this done in a couple periods, 2013 to 17, and then 2018 to 23. Some people might say, well, there's one more year in the second group. Yeah, but we had COVID, so it's really the same amount. Okay. Boys wrestling was in high school was decreasing from 13 to 17. Then from 18, as we saw in a previous slide, that's when the sanctioning of girls' high school wrestling started to explode. From 18 to 23, boys wrestling is now growing again. And you can see there's a much larger increase in NCAA men's teams. Because what's going to happen now that we have more girls' high school wrestlers, there's going to be more college wrestlers because these girls are not going to stay young all the time, right? And thereby, there's going to be more men's. So women or girls, whatever you want to say, sanctioning high school sport now or a couple years from now will lead to more men's college teams. Okay? I think that's an important factor for everyone, my generation and male, to realize how important it is. Okay. Now, on the next slide there, I have a couple quotes because I've been saying for a while how women have helped men, and a lot of guys my age just don't believe me on it. Mark Twain once said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. Okay. And guys, I'm going to say this bluntly. My generation guys, you've been fooled. Okay. All right. Period. Women are helping us. Title IX's not the reason that we lost wrestling. The reason is because we didn't react well. Okay. There's no fool like an old fool, right? Okay. Slide 28. Having a dual meet state tournament has no statistical effect on the boys' high school growth rate. Okay. Once again, do I think it's a good idea to have one? Heck yes. Okay. But I'm saying that so people can get the chance to wrestle and somebody can win a tournament and brag about it and all that stuff. And it's not mainly for the growth of the tournament, it's for the good of it. Okay. Now, there's a few states, boy states, that do not keep score in an individual state tournament. Okay. We've already reviewed that in the girls, why we keep it. I could repeat the same reason, but I don't want to pick on Mike. Okay. So there's not really much of a difference, but there's so few states, only 6 that don't keep score. So we really can't judge anything from that. Okay. It's just one of these things that we're not really sure. And 2 of these states, Illinois and Maryland, okay, didn't have any wrestling in 2021 because of COVID and stuff like that. So there's really some some moving parts to make it hard to say to anything definite in that. Okay. Does it matter if the dual meet is before or after? We really don't know. Okay. Because so few states have it after that we don't know. That's once again, go back to James Madison, the politician, not the college. Let the states decide. Let everyone decide what's best for them. Does it matter for growth for boys high school if the competition limit is team or individual? No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter for the growth of that of the high school boys. Okay, different states have different reasons. The next show we're going to get into how many matches people wrestle in college now compared to the old days. Okay, slide 33. Does the number days the individual state tournament have an effect on the boys' high school growth rates? No. Okay. My guess is only 2 states have a 4-day tournament, Iowa and Missouri, and then an even amount have a 2 or 3-day tournament. My guess is they have it longer because people come out to Iowa, 80,000 people in 2022, okay, thereby producing revenue. I think it's a revenue thing. I'm as capitalist as it gets, so I'm all for it. Okay. Now, we're going to sum this up on a white paper, 1 pager. There happens to be 2 pages, whatever you want to call it. 1 for girls, 1 for boys. I said in an earlier slideshow that we have other people on the show that know more about the sport than I do. I just happen to be good with numbers. Okay. I'm going to let you guys discuss this slide. But first, before we do this, we're going to skip to slide 36 and then come back to 35. Okay, Jason? Curry Regner, one of the great people at NWCA, sent me some stuff this morning. He thought it was going to be good for the show. Thank you for getting it to me, Curry. Big, big help. Okay. From 2017 through now, there are 32 different states that have had an NWCA Leadership Academy. Okay. I'm going to let, after I discuss the numbers, Jackie talk about that. I did help the NWCA out with that, but Jackie knows it much better than me. Okay. There's 18 states that have not. Now, the states that have had it tend to be the larger states, boys wrestling. This is just with boys, because girls wrestling, of course, we know was correlated so much with state sanctioning. We don't know if they're having it geographically. Be like, for example, Moyer's office is in PA, Pennsylvania's in PA too. Okay, so, but the bottom line to this, 80% of the growth in boys high school wrestling from 2017 to today, 2023, are from states that have had leadership academies. Okay? I'm going to repeat that, guys. 80% of the growth comes from those states. Okay. Now, I can't say for sure chicken or egg. Like, I've said this so many times, correlation doesn't prove causality, right? However, here, it looks like there's something there. And what makes it more special that the states happen to be the bigger states, they're usually a mature business, where the growth states, the ones that haven't had it, would probably grow at a faster percentage. So let's look at that. The ones with the Leadership Academy are growing at 16%, the ones without 13.5%. Okay, so there's really no reason not to do this. I think it's a great thing at your disposal. Now we're going to go back, please, Jason, to 35. And I'm going to let you guys, the 3 of you guys, talk about what you think might be helping this. The growth in boys and girls wrestling that you cannot definitely put a number on. Kevin, why don't you start us out, buddy?
Okay, there are a couple things I thought of, and I went and checked, and Virginia has 140 sanctioned clubs across the state, and I think that's been in growth, and I think that's led to more participation, It keeps the kids interested longer. You know, a lot of times you get kids that, you know, they've got a youth club, but then there's not much for them between that and high school. Now they have a summer program, and again, it's 140 across the state, and it's done a really good job. And I also think that just, you know, there's probably no statistical way to do this, but tradition probably has a lot to do. A state that has a really strong tradition, you know, is probably coming back stronger now. But I think one thing I was thinking about when you were talking, we were talking about growth and the dual meet. I wonder, but I think dual meets mean more for attendance than they do for growth. I can remember when there was real district, when there was 15, 20 matches a year that weren't 50, and they'd have these dual meets, and we had 3,000-4,000 people at a dual meet. When it got to where then now the kids were going to all day sit in a gym all day instead of just having a match on Wednesday night, people don't want to go sit in the gym for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, I think one thing when it comes to the dual meets and we're looking at the growth from the boys and girls side of things is access points with the growth of women's wrestling. You know, look at the top attendance team in NCAA Division I wrestling for the last decade and a half, and probably historically, has been the University of Iowa.
Wow.
In those eras where Gable was building those monster teams, a lot of those championships were also held on campus. The opportunity to get up close and personal to your soon-to-be heroes was built on campus and at dual meets and at places where there was something to see and something to root for. The men always had that. Now, when you take your daughter to Carver Hawkeye, unless they're a wrestling junkie, it's not the same until 8207, or I believe that was the number, right, Jackie? Until you've got something they want to see that's something that's like them. Okay, you know, you'll have I'm teaching my daughters about various sports. We were watching the women's volleyball championship yesterday, or we've had my oldest daughter, root for Helen and Adeline. So, and getting them into hockey and taking them to the St. Cloud State women's games as well as the men's games. But when you have a sporting event that's the girls are the center stage, and now college women and Olympic level women, professional women's athletes in their sport are performing, and they have access to them in a dual meet situation where they can see them up close. They can watch. Like, I'll use Brent Metcalf as an example on the boys' side. Like, there are kids that grew up going to Carver that wanted to be like Brent Metcalf because they saw him wrestle live. That opportunity in a dual meet affords itself a lot better than, am I going to miss Brent Metcalf because he's pinning a kid in 15 seconds over on mat AB in the South Annex of Mega Tournament 3. So I believe the dual meets, and with its growth level in women's wrestling, is still new. So the opportunity for the growth points from a dual meet on the women's side is still great. I think we've hit that kind of we know where that's going to be on the men's side, but the girls and the women's side of things, when we get more women's programs and we get better draws, we can see those high school. I think that's going to affect the growth in the states that have college women's teams, especially at the bigger schools. Once maybe the P5s and the Ivies start saying, okay, we're going to do this more. We're not going to sit here and throw all our money at NILs and pro, basically professional college football. So I think the dual meet growth potential at the college level to impact the dual meet growth potential at the high school level is kind of trickled down. And I think that's going to make an impact. And I think, again, people talk about going, it's not just college. Let's go. My high school dual meets growing up, like, oh man, I remember going to the Pocosin duels and we had the place sold out. And yeah, like Kevin's saying, in those dual meets, the girls are getting there. And I think we still have big duels. Kids want to be around successful programs. They want to compete in a sport where they're, again, to the point about being part of a team, being part of a community, and a packed gym will impact that with girls wrestling, I believe, just like it did decades ago with the boys. So I don't think we're there yet. I think those numbers are yet to be realized because it's still new in a lot of places. And once we get those, I think 8 years, 4 to 8 years is where we're really going to see these gyms get packed more and more and more. And to another point, is the power programs. Once the power programs in these high school states get behind it, then all of a sudden, where's your excuse? Well, Easton doesn't do it, so we don't need to do it. Nazareth does. Oh, wait a minute. Blair Academy, they do it. St. Edward, well, I think that's an all-boys school. That's a bad example. But, like, when we look at the schools that, these traditional programs now have girls wrestling teams, I think those little programs that might have been detracting a little bit have no excuse, and that will also help. So those are my two little soapboxes of where I think the girls' growth can come from the dual meet and the small-town atmosphere.
Thank you, Jason.
I think building off of what Jason said a little bit, and also what Kevin said, representation matters. Like I said previously, right? And that's what Jason alluded to with Carver Hawkeye Arena, right? Never before has a young girl been able to walk into Carver Hawkeye Arena and see someone like her wrestling on the mat. I think it's as simple as that, right? And we know what wrestling means to Iowa, okay? So when wrestling is coming through these other states and these other programs where, we have these amazing women's programs, right? We have Colorado Mesa out in Colorado. We have King down in Tennessee, Campbellsville down in Kentucky. We have these programs building something and have been building something for years. Look at what Joe Norton's doing up at North Central in Illinois. He has 50 women on his team. Like being able, and he's winning and won a national championship last year. That we have young girls that are able to see this now. Like, I want to go wrestle for Joe Norton up at North Central, and I'm 38 years old. Like a little girl who sees Yelena out there, or all of his other stars, they're gonna want to be like them. And I think that we have platforms now that are allowing us to showcase that as well. And I think that's why I think the growth for girls and women wrestling can be different because of something you have on the screen here and flow in social media. It's more accessible. Very simply put, right? It's more accessible. You used to have to take your family out to Carver Hawkeye Arena to actually watch that duel. You don't necessarily have to do that now. And, a fan in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming could watch the Trailblazer duels that we routed Iowa. So there's just more reach now. And then the second point that I want to make is simply the social acceptability. It's much more socially acceptable now for a girl to wrestle than it ever has been in the history of especially our country, right? Our country for a long time had ideals as to what a woman should look like. And, back in the AIAW days of women's sports, you could play tennis, you could golf, you could swim, you could do things that were considered more gentle, right? Wrestling was never in consideration for a woman back then. Now we live in a time, thankfully, where it's much more socially acceptable for women to do the same things as men. And I think that that's a big piece of this too. I have a 9-year-old little nephew who wrestles. And they've got probably almost as many little girls out there wrestling when my brother sends me pictures from his practices as they do little boys. And I think that's amazing. I'm pretty fired up. I actually get to go speak at their practice next week. And I'm excited because I know there's going to be little girls out there. And I know I get to stand up in front of them as a woman who works full time in the sport of wrestling. And I that's not lost on me. That's something I think is important. There aren't very many women that get to do that. And I'm very cognizant of that as well. And like I said, I'm really excited to be able to stand up in front of these little girls in this club in the middle of nowhere in Illinois, frankly, and show them that women can be a part of this sport at all levels and in all ways. And I think that that's something that is very different now as well.
Excellent, Jackie. Thank you for that input. Thank you for that, guys. Guys, I appreciate that input there. I needed that help with this. Now we're going to skip here to something. The next slide's just something interesting since we're a stats show. Okay. We did many shows. It'll be slide 38, Jason. We did many shows on team scoring and how it could change and stuff like that. For the first time ever, ESPN televised a dual meet live. Okay. As I'm sure you're all aware, The Hawkeyes beat the Cyclones 18-14. If they use match stats, margin of victory scoring, Iowa State would have beaten Iowa. Okay. Now, that doesn't happen real often, as we said on the shows, but there's going to be some instances happen, and this is one of them. And I will say this, being a stats guy, the chances of Kevin Dresser liking my scoring system is much better than Brand's liking it based on that result.
At least for that match.
At least for that match, correct. Okay. Now, next news, just a little news here. And of course, this show does have a big Virginia bias since Kevin and I are William and Mary alum, and Jason Bryant, is a Precocious guy and an Old Dominion guy. Another Virginia
And I've been
school.
to William and Mary timer 500.
Yes.
Anyway,
Jason
enough
Bryant.
about Glenn's old bar. We'll get back to the real stuff here.
Exactly. Jason was part of our team, basically. I saw him so often. So, anyway,
I'm not that
Terry
old.
Chaney is being Terry Chaney is being inducted to the EIWA Hall of Fame this March at Bucknell during the tournament. I'm already all over every William and Mary guy to make that tournament. Hope to see all you guys. How good was Terry Chaney? He was so good, he made me and Pincus look like we knew what we were talking about. Okay, which we clearly don't. Then we got a picture here. I asked Terry to send me a picture, and this is a Terry in a nutshell. He wanted his whole team to be around him. That's when we won the 1988 Virginia State title. And then I list all the William and Mary Eastern champs ever. Real quick, Sweezy, Aragona, Chaney, McLaughlin, that's Mark McLaughlin, Buzz Winchesky, Larimore, Chaney again, and Chaney was OW both times. So hats off, Terry. Great friend. He means a lot to me as a human being, and I'll be happy to be there watching him getting inducted. And that's pretty much
as a Pocosin guy,
the end
it's
of
hard
William
for me
and
to
Mary.
say, hey, good job to the York guy, too, because they were a rival high school. Granted, he was a little bit before my time, but he's also a product of the Peninsula Wrestling Association, the wrestling club that yours truly also came out of, even though I did trace amount of wrestling compared to Terry coming through. So,
Yeah. But you've helped the sport out in a lot of other ways, Jason. But I just wanted to let that's probably going to be our last thing ever in the EIWA, but we're going to go out on a good note. Now, Kevin, here's your part of the show now, where you're going to read us episode 27, match stats, notes 1 for girls, and then notes 2 for boys. Take it away, Kevin.
Okay, the largest factor that's under our control for girls wrestling growth is state sanctioning. Number 2, high school girls should have a state dual meet tournament to help growth. 3, girls should wrestle on girls' teams if it's at all possible. If the girls' school has a girls' team to help the growth. 4, if the high school doesn't have a girls' team, let the girls wrestle on the boys' team, but encourage them to start a girls' team. And of course, that goes with coaches and a lot of other things. There's some hurdles there, but trust me, it's coming. 5, the number of divisions in a state and allowing more than one entry per weight class per school has no effect on the growth rate of girls' participation. So just make your decisions based on what's good for the wrestlers. Number 6, on the boys' side, the advent of girls wrestling has coincided with the renewed growth of high school boys wrestling. We saw right before the girls took off, the boys were still on that steady downturn. As soon as the girls took off, the boys started back up. Having a dual meet tournament, keeping score at the individual tourney, and competition limits have no effect on growth rates for boys high school wrestling. 8, the number of days for the individual state tourney, and if it is this last event, have no provable effect on the boys' high school growth rate. 9, the length of the state individual tournaments is most likely based on revenue potential. And we saw when we watched that one slide, 4-day tournament in Iowa, yes, because they had 80,000 participants. And we learned then that Glenn is a capitalist. That, of course, we always do that. 10. There are factors determining the growth in high school boys in certain states that are nearly impossible to statistically prove. That's why we need the NWCA. On the NWCA weight class, it states the NWCA is focused on growth and growing the sport through its core competencies. And part of that, and we'll make it 10A, go to a local NWCA Leadership Academy. It's a great thing for your team.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And before we have going away things, next month's show, January, okay? And once again, we have Santa there and then Smokey dressed as Santa, okay? We're going to go through the number of matches. Now, we don't have enough yet on women because women's wrestling hasn't been around in college long enough. It's not that we're forgetting about them. There's a reason. The number of matches the top male wrestlers have wrestled through the years. We want to see what trends this is showing, how it compares with other sports, etc. So that's going to be January 17th, 2024, 3 p.m. Jason, Jackie, Kevin, anything else to say?
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Just
Festivus
thank you.
for those too. Those Costanzas out there, they love their Festivus.
Oh yeah.
Just thank you for the research. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to everyone for wanting to grow the sport.
Agreed.
Thank you,
Well said.
guys. And on behalf of Match Stats, Jason Bryant, Kevin Hazard, our special guest, Dr. Jackie Paquette, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Same time next month, guys.